A bitter wind howled across the Dakota plains, carrying flecks of ice like tiny knives against Amelia Farnsworth's skin. She'd never imagined this frozen wilderness would be her first real taste of the West. Wrapped in a threadbare cloak on the verge of collapse, she clutched a small locket, a reminder of the life she'd left behind back east. Suddenly, hooves thundered behind her through the blinding snow. A lone Lakota warrior emerged, his dark silhouette blending into the storm. In that desperate moment, a destiny neither had foreseen began to unfold. Sometimes, survival demands faith in strangers and in the wild beating of one's own heart. Amelia Farnsworth had never imagined her life could fit so neatly into a single trunk. She was born in Philadelphia to a modest family that valued hard work and high hopes. Her father, Leonard Farnsworth, had scrimped and saved for her education, ensuring she had the reading and writing skills seldom afforded to women of her day. When the Panic of 1873 shattered the family business, a small shipping agency, her father's health waned, and her mother grew desperate to secure Amelia's future. That future arrived in the form of an advertisement in the Philadelphia Daily Ledger, posted by a certain Mr. John Horner of Bismarck, Dakota Territory, seeking a respectable lady to become a wife and partner on frontier lands. Must be hard-working, decent, and willing to embrace the challenges of the West. Correspondence by post. Amelia hesitated before writing her first letter. She was no wide-eyed romantic who believed every word in a mail-order advertisement. Yet Mr. Horner's letters came back thoughtful and earnest. He described his small ranch on the outskirts of Bismarck, near the swiftly flowing Missouri River. He spoke of his plans to expand to build a life he could share with a strong, sensible wife. His tone was gentle, and his script was plain. Over time, and despite her caution, hope lit a small flame in Amelia's heart. Her father's passing only hastened her decision. With her mother's blessing, Amelia boarded a train heading west, carrying just 2 dresses, her mother's Bible, a few keepsakes, and the courage she clutched like a shield. She knew no one beyond Bismarck. She only had an address, a name, and a promise that Mr. John Horner would meet her at the station and escort her to the ranch where they would be wed come spring. Or so she believed. The train hissed and groaned to a stop in Bismarck. Snow flurries whirled around Amelia, biting her cheeks as soon as she stepped onto the station platform. She arrived during one of the harshest winters in recent memory. Word around the station was that a storm was brewing beyond the horizon, so travelers were urged to continue their journeys promptly or seek shelter. Amelia's nerves jangled. She spotted a man holding a small placard with her name, but it turned out to be a local coach driver, Tom Jenkins, hired by Mr. Horner to deliver her to a ranch about 20 miles out of town. Horner himself was delayed, Jenkins said. The ranch was in a state of urgent repair after an early freeze broke part of the stable roof. Despite her disappointment, Amelia accepted this explanation. She had, after all, traveled this far. It was too late to turn back. The next morning, Amelia set out with Tom Jenkins in a wooden coach loaded with supplies for the ranch. Lurching along the rough, icy roads, she clung to the seat, watching as the buildings of Bismarck disappeared behind them, replaced by a sea of wind-scoured plains. "Ma'am," Tom said, tipping his hat. "Name's Jenkins. I'll try to get you to Horner's place as quick as I can. But folks have been saying there's a storm coming. If it hits, we might have to wait it out at a trading post along the way." Amelia merely nodded, folding her hands in her lap. Fear crept into her stomach. She had known the West would be harsh, but the looming clouds on the horizon unnerved her. Sure enough, the temperatures dropped further, and the wind picked up until it howled in Amelia's ears. Snow fell in heavy sheets, turning the world an endless white. Before long, Tom Jenkins could barely see the ruts in the path. The horses grew skittish, their hooves crunching through drifts that climbed higher every hour. Near sundown, an icy gust overturned the small wooden coach into a snowbank. Amelia and Tom were thrown roughly against the coach interior. Dazed Amelia tried to stand, but her legs trembled beneath her. She heard Tom shouting, "Whoa, whoa, as the panicked horses lurched forward, snapping part of the harness. One horse broke free, taking a chunk of harness with it, and disappearing into the white void. The other staggered half buried in snow. Tom managed to climb out of the upturned coach, cursing under his breath. Amelia crawled through the door and stumbled into the blizzard. The wind whipped at her cloak, stinging her eyes so badly she couldn't see but a foot ahead. Tom led her to the horse that remained. "We've lost one horse, miss," Tom shouted above the gale. "We gotta find shelter, or we'll freeze to death out here." He rummaged through the overturned coach for blankets and supplies. They pressed forward, half leading, half dragging the single horse along. The terrain was a blur of white, with no sign of a trading post, a ranch, or any human settlement. The cold bit through Amelia's boots and numbed her toes. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Then something spooked the horse. She saw Tom lose his grip. The horse whinnied and bolted into the swirling snow. Tom ran after it, leaving Amelia behind with the coach and the scattered crates. Fear snaked up her spine. "Tom," she screamed, staggering forward. Snow clung to her eyelashes, and the wind roared so fiercely that her calls were swallowed by the darkness. Minutes dragged on. Her limbs felt like lead. She tried to follow the faint tracks Tom and the horse left behind, but the snowfall erased them in moments. Desperate, she turned around, seeking any sign of life. She found only the battered coach, half buried in a mound of snow. With no better option, Amelia returned to it. The temperatures plunged further. She fumbled for a loose blanket, a small lantern, anything that might protect her from the lethal chill. Her gloved hands shook uncontrollably, the feeling draining from her fingertips. She was alone. The swirl of snow around her was so thick it felt like a tomb. She thought of her mother's gentle face, of the letters from John Horner that brought her here, of the near impossibility of rescue in a storm like this. Tears threatened to freeze on her cheeks. She felt her consciousness slipping. Then, as if by miracle, she heard the crunch of footsteps. Faint at first, like a ghost in the storm. Through half-closed eyes, Amelia saw a figure tall, draped in furs, his black hair braided beneath a fur-lined hood. The man knelt beside her. She tried to speak, but her voice came out in a cracked whisper. He lifted her gently, his deep, dark eyes filled with concern. Without words, he gathered her into his arms, pressing a thick buffalo robe around her shoulders. Amelia drifted in and out of awareness, but one thought remained: she had been found. Whether by fate or by chance, she wasn't alone anymore. Amelia awoke to the scent of burning sage and the sound of soft drumming. She felt warmth enveloping her body. Slowly she realized she lay inside a large teepee, the canvas walls shifting in the wind. Her clothes had been removed, replaced with layered blankets. Alarm shot through her, but her body felt too exhausted to spring up. Every muscle ached. Her forehead burned with fever. She tried to speak, but her throat was raw. A young Lakota woman appeared at her side, offering a wooden bowl of steaming broth. Amelia recoiled slightly, but her thirst and hunger were overwhelming. She accepted it, sipping carefully. The woman offered a gentle smile. Moments later, the teepee flap opened. The man from the storm entered, brushing snow off his buffalo robe. He paused, eyes meeting Amelia's, then stepped forward. The woman said something in Lakota that Amelia couldn't understand, but the man nodded, crouching beside Amelia. He extended a hand, palm open, as if to show he meant no harm. In halting English, he introduced himself. "I am Wamnuha. You are safe." Amelia nodded, tears unexpectedly pricking her eyes. She tried to speak, but words caught in her throat. So many questions clawed at her mind. Where am I? Where is Tom Jenkins? How long have I been here? Yet the swirl of emotion robbed her of speech. She only managed a quiet, "Thank you." Wamnuha spoke again, more slowly. Storm was strong. "Found you, under snow." "Horse tracks?" "No man." His gaze flickered with uncertainty, as if waiting for her to fill in the story of how she came to be alone in such a deadly storm. Amelia could do little more than shake her head, racked by shivers. Exhaustion claimed her once more, and she sank back into the pillows of furs, lulled by the distant beating of a drum somewhere beyond the teepee walls. During the next few days, Amelia drifted in and out of fever dreams. Each time she woke, a different face hovered near her. Women with kind eyes and gentle hands. Men who watched curiously from the tent flap. They offered her food, water, and herbal medicines to soothe her lungs and warm her blood. She learned a few more names, though her memory was foggy. Wamnuha's mother, Winona, an elderly healer named Blue Bird, who administered bitter-tasting teas and sang in soft, melodic Lakota. Gradually, Amelia pieced together her situation. She was in the winter camp of a group of Lakota who had established their teepees near a flowing creek for water access. A ring of snow-covered hills encircled the valley, offering some shelter from the worst winds. Several families shared this camp, including Wamnuha's. He was a respected warrior, known for his skill at tracking game and his quiet generosity. Despite the warmth of the fires and the kindness of her hosts, Amelia felt a deep sense of displacement. She could barely communicate with most around her, though she recognized a handful of English words here and there. She did catch references to real names like Spotted Tail and Red Cloud, famed leaders among the Lakota people. Sometimes the men spoke of ongoing tensions with the U.S. Army, referencing Fort Abraham Lincoln near Bismarck. Amelia recalled reading about Colonel Nelson A. Miles in Eastern newspapers. Reality crashed in on her, the tension between the Lakota and the U.S. Government was real and dangerous. She found herself in the midst of a precarious moment in history, uncertain what to do next. One evening, as her strength returned, Amelia ventured out of the teepee for the first time. The frigid air stung her lungs, but she wrapped a buffalo robe around her shoulders. The camp was alive with activity. Children chased each other in the snow. Women tended fires. Men repaired tools or prepared weapons for hunting. The sense of community was palpable. She felt out of place, but also oddly comforted. Wamnuha saw her approached and gestured to the fire, inviting her to sit. Seated beside him, Amelia managed, "Thank you for everything. You saved my life." Wamnuha's brow knitted. You are welcome. You stay. Heal." She nodded. I must find." Her words faltered. "Tom Jenkins. John Horner. Do they even know I'm alive?" He tilted his head, waiting for her to finish. "Find fiancé," she tried to explain, placing a hand where a wedding band might be. "John Horner, in Bismarck." Recognition flickered in his eyes at the mention of Bismarck. He pointed south, his speech slow, carefully chosen words. "When storm is done, I help you." They sat in silence after that, the flames dancing between them. Amelia wondered how a single twist of fate had put her life in the hands of this man, a stranger from a culture she barely understood. Yet she felt only gratitude and a growing admiration for Wamnuha's quiet strength and generosity. Over the next week, the fierce blizzard raged on. The snows piled so high that traveling was nearly impossible. Amelia still held on to hope that Tom Jenkins had survived, that he had found some outpost or been rescued. But as the days dragged, her hope waned. Her thoughts kept returning to John Horner, the man she had crossed half a continent to marry. Had he given up on her? She had no way to know. In the Lakota camp, daily life revolved around communal work and survival. Amelia learned to help with simple tasks, fetching water from the creek, shaking out blankets, assisting in the distribution of dried meat. The language barrier was formidable, yet gestures and smiles bridged the gap. Slowly she picked up a handful of Lakota words. "How hello, Pilamaya." "Thank you." "Waste good." She discovered that this small group respected Wamnuha's father, Tall Eagle, who had once fought alongside great leaders like Sitting Bull. The older man carried a sadness in his gaze, a deep sorrow for the conflicts that had torn his people from their ancestral lands. Occasionally, Amelia overheard talk about a possible move once the snow melted. The men worried about cavalry patrols near the reservations. The women fretted about losing access to buffalo herds, which were dwindling from overhunting by white traders and soldiers. All of it was a stark reminder that she stood in the midst of a far larger struggle. Each detail made her question everything she thought she knew about the West. One cold afternoon, Amelia sat near the creek, letting the winter sun warm her face. Wamnuha approached, carrying a small wooden carving. He held it out to her. It was a rough figure of a hawk in flight, the edges smoothed and carefully whittled. She looked at him questioningly. "Wamnuha," he explained, tapping his chest. "Name means eagle, but I like hawk also." Amelia smiled, touched by his gift. She pressed a hand to her heart. "Amelia." "Amelia," he repeated softly. Their eyes met. A curious warmth flowed between them. Amelia quickly looked away, cheeks coloring. She was, after all, pledged to a man she'd yet to meet in person, a man she had to believe still waited for her, somewhere beyond the drifts of snow. Days turned into weeks. Eventually the storm broke, and the sky shone a bright, piercing blue. The Lakota hunters tested the trails, discovering that while snowdrifts were still formidable, travel might soon be possible. Amelia's heart fluttered. She would at last be able to reach Bismarck and John Horner. She was grateful to the Lakota for saving her life, but she felt a growing nervousness about leaving them. They had become something like an adopted family, especially Wamnuha. Yet she remained resolute. She had made promises back east, and her future lay in fulfilling them. Or so she told herself. Then one afternoon, as the men were discussing a hunting expedition, Wamnuha returned to camp earlier than expected, face dark with worry. He, Tall Eagle, and 2 other men had encountered a patrol of U.S. cavalry in the distance. They hadn't been seen, but the presence of soldiers so close spelled danger. The Lakota had no illusions about what could happen if their camp was discovered without the army's approval. They might be forced onto a reservation, or worse. Amelia realized this also threatened her. She was an outsider among the Lakota, But she certainly wasn't eager to be rescued by soldiers who might treat her saviors as criminals. Memories of newspaper stories about broken treaties and violent clashes haunted her thoughts. Wamnuha and Tall Eagle conferred with the elders. They decided that the camp must move by the next morning before the cavalry could pinpoint their location. Amelia felt a knot of fear. Where would they go? How would she reach Bismarck now? Late that night, Wamnuha found her outside her teepee, looking at the star-filled sky. In slow, measured English, he explained, "We leave soon. If you want Bismarck, I will take you alone. Others go different way." She hesitated, understanding that Wamnuha was offering to guide her, but also that it might endanger him if they ran into soldiers. It might be dangerous, she managed. He nodded. "Yes, but I keep you safe." The sincerity in his voice moved her. She remembered how he'd lifted her from the snow, how he'd shared his people's warmth and compassion. For a moment she questioned the path ahead, yet the thought of John Horner and her promise to her mother compelled her to accept Wamnuha's offer. "Yes," she said softly, blinking back tears that she couldn't fully explain. "Thank you." At dawn, camp was already stirring with hushed urgency. Amelia's belongings were minimal, just the clothes on her back, her cloak and a small bundle the Lakota women helped prepare dried meat, a canteen, and a spare blanket. She said her goodbyes to Winona and Bluebird, who pressed a small pouch of medicinal herbs into her hands. Amelia wasn't certain how to express her gratitude in words, so she simply embraced them, tears brimming. Tall Eagle placed a hand on Wamnuha's shoulder, offering a few words in Lakota. Amelia guessed it was a blessing or farewell. She could see in the older man's stern gaze a flicker of concern for his son's safety. With the rest of the tribe packed and ready to move westward, Amelia and Wamnuha turned east, heading toward Bismarck. They had 2 sturdy horses a blessing in this rugged land. As they rode, Amelia felt both relief and a pang of sadness. The wind carried away the smoke from the last fires of the only safe haven she had known in this region. They rode for hours in near silence. The snow glistened under the bright sun, reflecting so intensely that Amelia had to squint her eyes, watering. It was beautiful and harsh at once. She felt Wamnuha's presence behind her, steadfast, watchful. He noticed every shift in the winds, every faint track in the snow. She realized how differently he perceived the world, reading the land like a book she barely understood. By noon, they stopped near a frozen stream to rest the horses and eat a bit. Amelia felt exhausted from the cold, her body still recovering from her ordeal. Wamnuha offered her dried meat and a piece of fry bread he had tucked away. "How far?" "To Bismarck?" she asked, stuttering from the chill. 2 days. If the path is good," he replied. "We go slow." She nodded, hugging herself for warmth. Deep down, she dreaded the final goodbye she would have to give this man whose kindness had already saved her more times than she could count. They pressed on until twilight. Then, as they rounded a bend between 2 ice-crusted hills, they spotted a faint orange glow in the distance. Smoke from a chimney. A cabin, perhaps. Relief sparked in Amelia. Maybe they could find shelter for the night. Wamnuha, cautious, insisted on approaching quietly. They dismounted and guided their horses by the reins. As they neared, Amelia recognized the battered shape of a small cabin with a collapsed porch leaning precariously against the wind. A single horse stood in a makeshift corral out front. A broken sign near the door read, "Harris Trading Co." It looked abandoned, aside from the smoke curling from the roof. When Amelia and Wamnuha reached the door, it flew open, revealing a disheveled man in a tattered coat rifle at the ready. "Who goes there?" Amelia's heart pounded. She raised a hand. "We mean no harm, just seeking shelter." The man's gaze flickered from her to Wamnuha, narrowing in hostility. "What's that Injun doing with you, lady?" She bristled at the venom in his tone. She drew herself up. "He's my friend. He saved my life." The man relaxed the barrel slightly, eyeing her ragged cloak and the Lakota warrior behind her. "I'm Amos Harris. My father owned this place. He's gone now. I'm just waiting out the winter. Storm's taken about everything I had." He let out a mirthless laugh. "Got a bit of whiskey left, if that's worth anything." Amelia glanced at Wamnuha, who seemed on edge. She turned back to Amos. "May we shelter here tonight? We have some dried meat. We can share." Amos hesitated, his gaze wavering from suspicion to desperation. Finally, he stepped aside. "You can come in, but I'm keeping the rifle handy. I don't trust no Indians." Anger flickered in Amelia, but she bit her tongue. They were in no position to argue about hospitality. Inside the cabin was a single-room affair, a fireplace, a rough table, 2 chairs, and a bed in the corner. The place smelled of smoke-damp earth and stale sweat. A flickering lantern cast uneasy shadows on the walls. Wamnuha scanned the space, then nodded to Amelia, as if assuring her they would make do. They led their horses to a small lean-to behind the cabin, then came in to settle near the fire. Amos sat on the edge of the bed, rifle across his lap. "You said he saved your life, huh?" he asked, motioning toward Wamnuha with his chin. "Yes," Amelia said, forcing composure into her voice. "I was lost in a blizzard after my stagecoach crashed. He and his tribe rescued me." Amos snorted. "Well, I guess you've had some luck. Still can't trust them. They raid farms, kill settlers." Wamnuha understood enough English to grasp the insult. His jaw tightened, but he remained silent. Amelia bristled. She had to remind herself that this was still the frontier. Fear, prejudice, and misunderstanding ran deep on both sides. She decided not to argue, focusing instead on staying safe for the night. As the night wore on, Amos loosened his tongue, sipping from his whiskey bottle. He began ranting about his misfortunes, a failed claim during the Black Hills gold rush, a brother killed by bandits near Deadwood, the meager living he'd carved out at the trading post. "I'm just trying to hold on to something out here," he grumbled. Amelia listened politely, though she cast worried glances at Wamnuha, who sat quietly, eyes on the fire. It was late when Amos suddenly leaned forward, squinting at Amelia in the flickering lantern light. "You said your name was Farnsworth," he muttered. She nodded. "Yes, Amelia Farnsworth." A strange grin spread across his unshaven face. "Ain't that a twist? I heard a fella mention that name in Bismarck a while back. Farnsworth. Farnsworth." He snapped his fingers, trying to recall. "I was in a saloon, met a man named John Horner. Mentioned he was expecting a Farnsworth girl from Philadelphia." Hope jolted Amelia upright. "You saw John Horner when couple weeks back," Amos said. "He was talking up how his mail-order bride got delayed. Heard a rumor that she might have died in a blizzard. Man was in a foul temper." Amelia paled. "He thinks I'm dead?" That's what folks were saying. No one could confirm, though. He was worried about you, but also angry, like maybe he wasn't sure if you just ran off. Hard to say. Didn't stick around to ask. The saloon in Bismarck can be a rough place. She swallowed hard, a lump of conflicting emotions forming in her throat. Wamnuha was watching her concern, etched on his face. She managed a small smile, as if to say, "I'm okay." But inside her heart hammered. "Do you know if he's still in Bismarck?" she asked, desperation creeping into her voice. Amos shrugged. "Might be. Or he might have gone back to his ranch. Think he said it was a day's ride from Bismarck, near a place called Apple Creek." Tears pricked Amelia's eyes. After all the uncertainty, she now had a lead. John Horner was alive, searching for her, perhaps believing she had perished. She thanked Amos, who just waved her off, mumbling something about luck. Eventually, he crawled into the bed, leaving Amelia and Wamnuha by the fire. They would be lucky to get any real rest, given the man's snores and the tension filling the cramped cabin. Leaning against the wall, Wamnuha whispered, "You found your man. Soon you see him." Amelia nodded, yet her heart twisted in guilt. She owed her life to Wamnuha and his people, and she now faced the final step toward a new life with another man. Would John Horner truly embrace her after everything that happened? And how would she ever explain the bond she now felt with the Lakota warrior who saved her? The questions circled like vultures, robbing her of sleep for the rest of the night. Dawn brought a weak sunlight filtered through ragged clouds. Amelia and Wamnuha packed quickly, eager to leave Amos Harris and his brand of hostility behind. He had softened slightly by morning, even offering them a bit of coffee brewed in a dented tin pot. But the tension remained. "Well, good luck," he muttered, leaning in the doorway. His rifle was still at hand. "And watch yourself in Bismarck. It's no place for naive folks." Amelia thanked him, forcing a polite smile. They mounted their horses and set off eastward once more. By midday, the landscape changed. The snowdrifts grew shallower, the ground more level. Amelia recognized the faint outlines of telegraph poles in the distance, signs of the railroad, and the creeping edge of civilization. Sure enough, by late afternoon, the sprawling outskirts of Bismarck came into view. Wooden homes scattered among muddy streets, the stockyards, the stables, and the row of bustling shops along Main Street. An unexpected rush of anxiety gripped Amelia. This was where she had planned to meet John Horner, but so much had transpired since then. She glanced at Wamnuha, whose expression was unreadable as he took in the sights and sounds of the frontier town. "You will be safe," he said quietly, as if reassuring her that the swirl of people and noise wouldn't consume her. Amelia nodded, too nervous to speak. They rode slowly into town, drawing stares from passers-by. Amelia knew it was because of her companion, a Lakota warrior in full winter gear, guiding his horse through a predominantly white settlement. Tension crackled in the air as curious onlookers paused to gape. She forced herself to ignore them, focusing on her next step, finding John Horner. Outside the modest building that served as the Bismarck post office, Amelia dismounted. The old clerk inside startled at the sight of Wamnuha, but he recognized Amelia from weeks earlier when she had inquired about her mail. "Oh, Miss Farnsworth, we heard you might be lost in that awful blizzard," he exclaimed, nearly dropping his glasses. "I'm so glad you're alive." Amelia forced a smile. "I'm all right, thanks to my friend. Do you know if Mr. John Horner is still in town?" The clerk twisted his lips. "Last I heard, Horner was at the St. Charles Hotel just down the street, but I believe he was fixin' to head back to his ranch soon. Folks said he was upset thinking that you might not have survived." "Thank you," she said. With an anxious breath, Amelia signaled Wamnuha, and they walked down the street toward the small two-story St. Charles Hotel. Before going inside, she turned to Wamnuha, voice trembling. I think it's best if I speak to him alone. The people here, they don't understand." His eyes flickered with concern, but he nodded. "I wait." She swallowed, stepping forward. A wave of fear and relief crashed over her. Would John Horner welcome her? Would he be angry? She could only find out. The hotel lobby smelled of pipe smoke and polished wood. Amelia approached the desk. A short man in a vest looked up, face flickering in recognition. "Miss Farnsworth." "Good heavens, you're alive." She nodded, though her voice caught. "Is Mr. Horner here?" He pointed at a door leading to the dining hall. "He's having a meal. He'll be stunned to see you." Taking a shaky breath, Amelia crossed the threshold into the dining hall. A handful of men sat at scattered tables, nursing bowls of stew or cups of coffee. Then she saw him, John Horner, with dark hair and a neatly trimmed beard, wearing a serviceable coat. He looked older than she'd imagined, lines of worry creasing his brow. He stared into a cup of coffee, as though searching for answers. Trembling, Amelia cleared her throat. "Mr. Horner." He jolted, turning in his seat. His eyes widened as if he were seeing a ghost. Amelia. Her heart lurched at the sound of her name on his lips. Tears threatened, but she held them back. "Yes, I'm sorry. The storm. I was lost." He rose so quickly his chair nearly tipped. He grasped her shoulders, his eyes brimming. "I feared the worst. Folks said no one could have survived that blizzard. I kept waiting, hoping, praying." "Good Lord, Amelia, what happened?" She let him guide her to sit. In halting sentences, she explained how the stagecoach crashed, how Tom Jenkins vanished, and how she was rescued by a Lakota tribe. Her ordeal poured out. He listened rapt, though his jaw set in tension at the mention of the Lakota. "I'm so sorry," she finished. "I tried to come as soon as I could." He clasped her hands. "It's not your fault. Thank God you're safe." "I'd given up hope." His voice caught. "I prepared a funeral service in absentia, just in case. But you're here." His grip tightened. "We can still make our life together on the ranch. I'll write your mother right away." Relief and confusion warred inside her. She felt gratitude for his concern, but she also sensed a strange distance, like they were strangers forced into a hug. "Thank you for not giving up," she managed. Horner noticed her ragged attire, the buffalo robe draped over her shoulders. "We'll get you new clothes, a warm bed, and then we can finally talk about wedding arrangements." He smiled, but it looked forced. "Though there's a lot of talk here about rising tensions with the local tribes. I can't have you riding around with Indians anymore." A twinge of anger flared. "They saved my life," she said, her voice firmer than she expected. "I owe them everything." He waved a dismissive hand. "I'm grateful for that, of course. But these are complicated times, Amelia. We've got to be cautious." She bit her lip, recalling the sense of home she felt among the Lakota, how they'd shared what little they had without question. The stark contrast in Horner's tone reminded her that she was stepping back into a world of prejudice and politics. Still, she nodded. "All right. But I must speak to my friend first. He's outside. I owe him an explanation." Horner frowned. "Your friend, one of those Indians?" She bristled at the tone in his voice. "Yes, Wamnuha. He guided me here." Horner's shoulders tensed. "Well, all right. But let's be quick, Amelia. The less attention, the better. Outside Wamnuha stood near the hotel wall, ignoring the stares from townspeople. Amelia approached, bracing herself for the moment she had dreaded. His dark eyes searched her face, reading every tension line. She forced a shaky smile. "He's here. He's happy I'm alive." Wamnuha nodded, as though anticipating this outcome. "You stay with him now." Amelia's breath shuddered. This was the question at the heart of her turmoil. She had come all this way for John Horner, but her journey had shifted something inside her. Life once so linear now felt tangled with conflicting loyalties. Finally, she managed a soft, "I must. I promise to marry him." A flicker of hurt passed across Wamnuha's features, though he hid it quickly. She reached out, placing a hand on his forearm. "I can never repay you for saving me. You and your people. You gave me warmth, safety, a home." He gazed at her hand. The moment stretched taut. "Pilamaya," he said softly. "Thank you in Lakota." Then haltingly, You are strong. Good spirit." Tears threatened to fall. She tightened her grip. "This isn't goodbye forever, is it? Maybe we can meet again, after things settle." He managed a faint smile, though sadness lingered. Different worlds. Not easy. But maybe. He shifted, pulling out the small wooden hawk he had carved before. He pressed it into her hands, closing her fingers around it. Amelia pressed her lips together, fighting tears. "Wamnuha," she whispered. "Be safe." She wanted to say more, to confess her gratitude, her confusion, her regret that destiny drew them in separate directions. But words failed. He nodded solemnly, then turned, mounting his horse. The crowd parted as he rode away, a lone figure heading west toward the open plains. She stayed there for a moment, wooden hawk in hand, feeling as though half of her heart had just galloped away with him. John Horner insisted they leave Bismarck for his ranch the very next day. He seemed both anxious to whisk Amelia away from prying eyes and eager to begin their new life. Amelia found herself caught in a whirlwind of shopping for practical clothes, settling accounts at a local mercantile, and preparing to travel again, but this time to the place she'd originally intended to call home. They journeyed south along the Missouri River, crossing near Apple Creek. The ranch was a modest spread, 2 small cabins, a barn, a paddock for horses, and a few hundred acres of winter-browned pasture. John explained how he'd inherited the land from his uncle, along with a chunk of debt. He'd hoped a wife's help and a potential dowry, though Amelia had none, would see him through. His finances, it seemed, were shakier than he'd let on in his letters. As they settled into the main cabin, Amelia felt the tension creeping in. John vacillated between warmth and impatience. Some days he was gentle apologetic for the hardships she'd endured. Other days he seemed resentful, especially when the ranch bills came due, or when talk of the local Lakota surfaced. "They're trouble," he muttered once while reading a newspaper detailing a skirmish near Fort Yates. "I don't trust any of them." Amelia stiffened, remembering Wamnuha's kindness, his devotion to protecting her. "Not all are like that," she argued. "Many just want to live in peace on their lands." He sighed as though speaking to a child. "Amelia, you were lucky. But you can't judge the whole tribe by one man. They've attacked settlements, stolen livestock." His frustration radiated. "We've got enough problems without you pining for them." She bristled at his condescension. More and more she saw that the John Horner in the letters was not entirely the man before her now. His desperation, financial and emotional, had shaped him into someone closed off to any perspective but his own. Winter's grip loosened slowly, but with spring came the muddy thaw, and the ranch chores piled up. Amelia worked alongside John, mending fences, tending the small herd of cattle, cooking what meager meals she could from their dwindling stores. She tried to be the dutiful partner she had promised to be, but an uneasy feeling gnawed at her. This was not the life she had pictured. It came to a head one day when a man named Elias Thorne rode up to the ranch. He was tall, with a cold demeanor and sharp, calculating eyes. He dismounted, tipping his hat to Amelia, before turning to John. "You got my payment, Horner?" John stiffened, glancing nervously at Amelia. "I need more time, Thorne. The winter's been hard. The herd didn't do as well." Thorne laughed, a harsh sound. "Time, I've given you time. You promised to pay off your debt by spring, or I take the ranch." Amelia's blood ran cold. Debt. Take the ranch. She realized John had never told her the full extent of his problems. This wasn't a mere shortage of funds. He was on the brink of losing everything. Thorne's gaze slid to Amelia. "I see you found yourself a bride. Congratulations. Shame if you had to start married life with no roof over your heads." John's hands trembled with anger, but he said nothing, swallowing hard. Amelia wanted to speak up, demand an explanation, but the tension was too thick. Finally, Thorne spat. "I'll be back in a week. Either you have the money, or you'd best start packing." He mounted and galloped away, leaving a swirl of dust in his wake. Amelia confronted John. "You lied to me," she accused. "You never said anything about losing the ranch." He whirled, on her face taut. "I had no choice. I thought by the time you arrived, I could have things sorted. Then that storm. Everything fell apart. I need you. I can't do this alone." She stepped back, tears in her eyes. "But you never told me the truth," she said, voice quivering. She realized how trapped she felt, far from the East, on the threshold of a marriage to a man drowning in debt. She thought of returning to Philadelphia, but where would she go? Her mother was barely scraping by. The ticket for a train ride back was far beyond her means now. A wave of sorrow washed over her. What have I done? In the days that followed, John grew desperate. He scoured the area for a loan, but most neighbors were in similar straits. Cattle losses, high interest rates, or the ongoing trouble with the railroad. Nothing panned out. Meanwhile, Thorne's threat loomed. One afternoon, John found Amelia in the barn feeding the horses. He looked pale, like he hadn't slept. "I found a way," he said, voice hollow. "But you won't like it." She set down the hay. "Tell me." He swallowed. "There's a group of men in Bismarck forming a company to forcibly push the Lakota off certain lands. They're paying volunteers a bounty for each piece of evidence we bring that the land's being taken back from the tribe. I could earn enough to clear my debt." Amelia's eyes flared in horror. "You want to join men who hunt Lakota?" "Are you mad?" He grimaced. "It's not like that. They'll just be scouting, making arrests. The military is cracking down since the new treaties. I'm just collecting money for information, that's all." She shook her head violently. "They saved me. John Wamnuha saved me. I won't let you betray them." He grabbed her arms. "You think I want to do this? I have no choice. If I don't raise enough money by next week, we lose everything. Thorne will throw us off this land, and we'll be out on the road. Can you face that? Is that better?" Fury and fear surged through Amelia. She tore away from him. "You can't do this," his voice cracked. "I have to. You have to understand." Then he stormed out, leaving her trembling with anger. She felt caged, suffocated by the weight of John's desperation. Was this truly the man I came to marry? That night, Amelia sat alone in the cabin, a single candle flickering on the table. Her thoughts roamed to the Lakota camp, to Wamnuha's gentle smile, to Bluebird's healing teas. She pictured them going about their lives in precarious balance with the encroaching settlers. The idea of John conspiring with men who intended to drive the Lakota away sickened her. She clenched the small wooden hawk in her hand. If only I could warn them. John was snoring in the adjacent room, exhausted by guilt and stress. Amelia stood, heart hammering. She slid on her cloak and boots, carefully opening the cabin door. Outside, the moon glowed on the frosty ground. She moved quietly to the barn, saddling a horse, trembling at her own audacity. She had to find Wamnuha. She had to warn him and his people. Leaving John's ranch behind in the dead of night, she rode north, guided by dim starlight and memory. She had no idea if she would even locate the Lakota camp. She only knew she had to try. By dawn's early glow, Amelia reached the hills where Wamnuha's tribe had camped last. But the winter site was abandoned, as she expected. She pressed on, hoping to find fresh tracks or signs of where they might have relocated. She battled exhaustion, remembering how she had nearly died in these very lands. But desperation fueled her. Hours passed with no sign. Finally, she spotted faint smoke near a cluster of pines. Carefully, she approached, leading her horse on foot. A scout whistled an alarm, and 2 Lakota riders appeared, bows drawn. Amelia raised her hands, praying they would recognize her. One man squinted, then called out. The bows lowered, and they rushed to guide her toward the new camp. Relief flooded her as she saw a familiar figure step from a teepee Wamnuha. He rushed forward, placing a hand on her arm. "Amelia, what?" Breathless, she tried to speak, but collapsed to her knees from exhaustion. He helped her up, guiding her near a fire. As soon as she regained her breath, words tumbled out. She explained how John planned to join men, determined to drive the Lakota from their lands, how there might be raids or arrests. She begged them to move or take precautions. The elders listened grimly. Tall Eagle's face betrayed an anger that simmered beneath his stoic expression. They conferred in rapid Lakota, some voicing a refusal to be chased further. Others argued they must retreat yet again to avoid bloodshed. Eventually, they chose to move farther west, deeper into territory they hoped would remain out of the army's immediate reach. Meanwhile, Amelia realized she had burned the last bridge with John. By warning the Lakota, she had effectively turned her back on her fiancé, on the life she once sought. She felt sadness, but also a sense of righteousness. She'd done what her conscience demanded. Unfortunately, John was not a fool. When he awoke and discovered Amelia missing along with a horse, he guessed where she had gone. Furious and feeling betrayed, he rode hard to Bismarck to make a deal with Elias Thorne and the so-called bounty men. Together they set out to track the Lakota. Thorne gleefully realized that John's knowledge of Amelia's connection to the tribe would help them locate the hidden camp. As Wamnuha's people packed to leave, watchers alerted the camp that a large group of armed men was approaching. Panic rippled through the Lakota, especially the elders who had experienced enough betrayal to sense danger. Amelia's heart pounded. She saw the dust cloud rising in the distance. Wamnuha swiftly rallied the warriors to defend the camp, while the women and children prepared to flee. Within minutes, Thorne and his hired guns arrived, forming a line on a rise above the camp. John was with them, his face twisted in anger and desperation. He spotted Amelia standing beside Wamnuha. "You betrayed me," he shouted, voice cracking. "I had no choice but to come here with Thorn. Hand over the tribe's leaders, and we can end this without bloodshed." Amelia stepped forward, trembling with fury. "You swore you just wanted to gather information. Now you ride in with armed men, ready to destroy these people's homes." John spat in frustration. "I told you I can't lose my ranch. Thorn offered me enough to pay my debt if I help him." Thorn raised his rifle, sneering. "Stand aside, girl. This is official business." A standoff erupted. Lakota warriors drew their bows and rifles. Thorn's men aimed their guns. The tension was as taut as a drawn bowstring. Wamnuha moved beside Amelia, placing a protective arm in front of her. She could hear the unsteady breathing of men prepared to kill. Her mind raced. If violence erupts, many will die on both sides. Time seemed to slow. Amelia saw Thorn wave an arm, urging his men to move forward. She saw Lakota warriors whisper a last prayer, taking aim. Then she saw John in the thick of it all, looking trapped, torn between his fear of losing the ranch and the horror of unleashing gunfire on innocent families. She stepped forward, hands raised. "Stop! Please stop!" No one budged, but eyes flicked to her. Heart pounding, she turned to Thorn. "If it's money you want, I can help you get it. But not like this." Thorn barked a laugh. "You help me get money. You're just a mail-order bride with no dowry." Amelia set her jaw. "There's a trading post near Apple Creek, Harris Trading Co. The man there, Amos Harris, said he had a stash of gold from Deadwood. I heard him brag about it when we stayed there. You want to make a profit? That's your place." She paused, lying swiftly. "He told us about a hidden store of ore he planned to sell once spring came." A flicker of greed lit Thorn's eyes. "You're bluffing." She glared at him, calling on every bit of righteous fury to sell the lie. "I was there. I saw it. Several sacks of ore under the floorboards. You want to waste bullets on these people, or you want real gold?" He hesitated, greed battling the thirst for blood. John, at the same time, shouted, "She's lying, Thorn!" But Amelia shook her head vehemently, never dropping Thorn's gaze. "Go see for yourself. If I'm lying, you can come back and find me." The men behind Thorn shifted uneasily. They hadn't been keen on a bloody fight. They just wanted to get paid. Now Thorn faced a choice gamble on a rumored stash of gold, or start a war with well-armed Lakota warriors. Finally, Thorn cursed under his breath. "We'll check this trading post. But if you've played me false, I'll burn your ranch and kill every last one of these savages." He wheeled his horse around, motioning for his men to follow. Amelia's breath whooshed out as the riders turned away. John lingered, staring at Amelia with disbelief and betrayal. You'd lie to them." She locked eyes with him. Better a lie than bloodshed. His face twisted. "What about my ranch?" "The debt." She lifted her chin. "I don't know. But I can't watch innocent people die, so you can keep your land." Pain and anger warred in his gaze. Then, without another word, he spurred his horse to follow Thorn's men, vanishing into the dust. The Lakota camp erupted in relieved cheers and shouts, but the mood was still tense. They knew Thorn and his men might return furious at the deception, or that the cavalry could ride in at any moment. Tall Eagle ordered the tribe to pack and move west immediately. Amelia turned to Wamnuha, her lungs still heaving from the confrontation. She expected him to be angry that she had brought such danger to them. Instead, he nodded solemnly. "You saved us." She pressed a trembling hand to her chest. "I only wish I could do more." "But you must leave. They'll be back once they realize the gold isn't real." He touched her shoulder gently. "Come with us." She froze. Her mind replayed every moment since the fateful blizzard, the warmth and acceptance she felt among the Lakota, the harsh reality of John Horner's choices, the line she had crossed by betraying him for what she believed was right. A wave of release washed over her. She realized she had no home, no future in that ranch life built on fear and desperation. She had burned that bridge. Her place was here among those who had welcomed her, without question, who had saved her life twice now. And she felt a stir in her heart whenever she looked at Wamnuha, something far deeper than gratitude. She nodded, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. "Yes. If your people will accept me, I want to stay." His shoulders relaxed in relief, and a genuine smile curved his lips. "Come." With that single word, Amelia Farnsworth turned away from the illusions of her old life and embraced a road seldom traveled by outsiders. She would journey with the Lakota, share their struggles, learn their ways, and stand beside them in the uncertain future that lay beyond the western horizon. Sometimes life's twists lead us to places we never planned to go, places where we discover not just our true selves, but the quiet bravery within our hearts. Amelia Farnsworth set out to be a mail-order bride in a harsh frontier. Instead, she found her true home among the Lakota, forging a bond strong enough to defy the brutal storms of both nature and human conflict. Her decision to warn Wamnuha's people saved them from devastation and rescued her from a fate shaped by lies and debt. If you enjoyed this tale of hope, courage, and unexpected love, please like this video, share it with anyone who loves a great Wild West drama, and subscribe for more stories that explore the powerful connections that can unite us even across different worlds. Your support helps keep these stories alive, so thank you for being part of the journey.